Hi, Leo. Welcome to your September 2020 Astro Alchemy. It's Raina here, and I hope that you have had a wonderful solar return, Leo. As I record this, the sun is now in Virgo. So this is a great time, though, for Leos. It's not like, oh, wow, nothing good is happening. Actually, now the party moves to the second house because we're talking about Virgo, the sign that comes after you. And so in the chart, this is going to be the second house of earned income. So the sun is there as the month begins, and Mercury is as well. And that can mean that you are thinking about your money for some reason. And with the sun comes positive vibes. The sun is a creative force. It's our life force. And in the second house, that is what you are pouring your life force into, is your monetary situation. And this is going to be true always at this time of the year for you. Whether or not you have ever made that connection, and now that I'm saying that, if you think and you say, wow, late August during the time of Virgo, this is the time when I tend to have more money, or it seems like I'm generating more money, or the beginning stages of it, because I want to say one more thing, that this reading is also for Leo rising, not just for the sun in Leo. And the rising sign, which is the backbone of the chart and the cusp of the first house, that can point to a whole new cycle. So if you're Leo rising and you do have at least part of Virgo in that second house, that can be also true for you, and maybe even especially true compared to the sun, because this is going to be, the rising sign is more of the mundane events and how they unfold. And this, whenever we are asking, okay, what's going to happen, we're really looking at it from that standpoint of the rising sign. So it really is important to find out what your natal chart looks like, so that you can get a feel for that. The solar chart can help you, I think, to ascend, to expand, to aspire to become more than what you are today. But I think that in terms of those mundane events, the natal chart is very helpful for that. Both can be valuable, obviously. So anyway, on the 2nd of the month, we have a full moon at 10 degrees of Pisces. So for the sign of Leo, this is going to be the 8th house, but for certain people. If you are a Leo who was born in July, this is more likely to be occurring in your 7th house, which is the house of committed partnership. And also, if you have your rising sign from 0 to 9 degrees of Pisces, this will actually be happening in the house prior, or the 7th house of committed partnership. So for those people, and one of the things I want to make very clear here is, I said most of you who have July birthdays, but not necessarily all of you, because 9 degrees of Leo, if you have the first 9 degrees of Leo as your sun sign, depending on what year it is, it could be like, up to the 28th of July, or, you might actually be only, it's not going to be for everybody all month long in July. But for those that this applies to, that have it in the 7th house, this could be some kind of a crisis point with your primary relationship, significant other, marriage, whatever you want to call it, where you find out something about that person. Full moons can bring things that have been secret to the surface. And that could have its own consequences, but it doesn't have to be like cheating, that I'm kind of implying that, but it doesn't have to be like a secret like that. It could be like something that that has always been bothering them. How when they were young, they were abused and you never knew about that. And now you understand certain behaviors that they've had that you consider negative or just problematic, and now you've put two and two together. Or maybe you took offense to that and thought it had something to do with you, and it had nothing to do with you, and they explained it. But whenever you have a full moon, you're having an opposition from the sun. So the sun is going to be in the opposite house at the same degree in the opposite sign. So at that time, the sun is at 10 degrees of Virgo. So again, we're talking about, with Virgo, we're talking about the second house. I have to say that this is a general reading. So it's going to vary from person to person. For those who are born in July or the first 9 degrees of Pisces, this may be in your first house. This full moon, this full moon period, but your sun is in that first house. So that means that there's something about you that you're honoring that, relates to that opposition, learning about that other person. So it could be that you're seeing that person as they really are for the first time, and it's going to allow you to make necessary changes. It can be that you're ready to commit to that person. Perhaps you were living together, and that's absurd to me, because living together to me is like being married. But for some people, they still want the bells and whistles. So you might still not feel like you're fully committed to that person, and it's like, okay, Buster, it's time. We can only go so far now, and I want this. And I'll tell you, if you are a Leo who has Venus in Cancer, or maybe even Mars in Cancer, this could certainly be the case where you're like, I'm talking about, it could be either gender, but I have a lot more female viewers. So if you're somebody who is a female Leo, you're usually very independent, but you might have that streak in you that is very traditional, and you're like, hey, Buster, I want to get married. I'm not content with just being a live-in honey. I want to be married. I want to have a wedding ring and all that stuff. By the way, I know this is kind of off topic, but I was just looking at my analytics, and I have, I'm starting to grow and have more men, which is really wonderful. So I always love to have male viewers, because it's not the majority, and the more the merrier. And that can certainly be true for male. It's not just women who want to have these things. Sometimes the man may want to feel that they have this union, and it's symbolized by the ring or the ceremony or what have you. So something with relationship can come up. For the rest of you, this is going to be in the 8th house. And this is very intense. This is deep diving into your psyche, into the shadow, the part of you that is there underneath it all and could be motivating certain behaviors. For instance, those emotions that we don't like to admit that we have: rage, envy, jealousy, thoughts of revenge, which is, kind of that sense of rage or wanting to get even with somebody, because this is Scorpio's house, and that's kind of what Scorpio as a sign wrestles with. And so that can purge that area in some way and lead to healing, lead to breakthroughs, because you're allowing yourself to see this. You're allowing yourself to acknowledge it. Leo is a very proud sign, and sometimes Leo wants to present themselves as very strong and powerful, and you are. You are the strength card in the tarot, but you're human, and you have times when you may feel jealousy. Would you ever admit it? Probably not, because you want to act like you're above it all. But you could have these feelings, maybe somebody that you feel betrayed you, and still having lack of forgiveness in this area. Wanting them to suffer, wanting revenge, and understanding the whole truth is important. Sometimes the whole truth can involve yourself. Like, what did you bring to that situation that made it more likely to happen? And so sometimes when people feel victimized, they're not looking at the whole picture and how they contributed to the situation. And that is not blaming the victim. That is not needing a victim. That is trying to look at hard, tough situations in a new light, so that, because when you feel like a victim, it's very hard to feel self-empowered, because it feels like it was unfair, it shouldn't have happened. And I do believe that it is important to know when you have been truly wronged. That is for sure. But I'm just speaking about it from the perspective of, like, what can you do about moving forward. The 8th house is really about the area of death. So something, it's like kind of allowing something to die that needs to die, so you can be that phoenix rising from the ashes. At the time of, maybe February, when we have a new moon in this same house, and you're able to feel a sense of being reborn. On the 5th, Mercury goes into Libra, so that is a friendly angle. That is called a sextile, and that can mean that you are, this is going to be in Mercury's own 3rd house. So it's very communicative. It's very, associated with wanting to receive information, give information. There may be documents. There may be a lot of traveling in your local area for some reason. Perhaps you're getting things prepared. Learning news about a teaching position if you are a teacher, or some program. Maybe you're starting some kind of a training that is going to give you more skills. The 3rd house can be those skills that you utilize for that are practical skills. This is the area of mundane knowledge, practical knowledge. On the 6th, also, I should say too, is that the 3rd house can be siblings. So it's a shame that, the fear of death is so prevalent, because one of the things about the full moon in the 8th house, for those of you who are going to have it in the 8th house, is this could be physical death, but it doesn't have to be. And if it is a physical death, it could be somebody that maybe has already been ill, and is that you were preparing for this. Maybe they're in hospice right now, because the 2nd of September is, coming up within a week. We're not talking about some kind of sudden death necessarily. We're talking about something that you have been preparing for that finally comes to that fruition. But this is part of life. And it's really interesting, because my partner one time was telling me about this man that he that was, the father of one of his good friends who was pretty much on his deathbed. I think he might have been in hospice. And all the nurses were saying, you look great, blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't true. But it was like they were just trying to, be in denial. The people that were coming and visiting, nobody wanted to really acknowledge that this was the end of this man's physical life. And death is an illusion, I think. And I'm sure a lot of you believe so as well. It's really sad mostly for the person who is left behind. And that's, that may be something that you are working with this full moon, is really understanding all the nuances of what death means. And perhaps it's with somebody who died 10 years ago. It doesn't even have to be somebody who is dying now. It's like Pisces is the final sign. So there's it's like old soul wisdom that's coming from Pisces, and that's in the 8th house. So I wanted to just, mention that, because if Mercury in the 3rd means that you're talking to siblings, perhaps you're talking about this parent's death. And that can be, making you talk more often. Or I guess it doesn't have to be a parent. It could be aunt or uncle, because the 3rd house could be cousins too. But the point is that you may be more in communication with them at this time. Again, this is not for everybody. This is just potentially connected to that for some people. On the 6th, Venus goes into Leo, and this is going to be another great thing for you, because Venus is going into your sign, Leo. So that can make you very attractive to others. Now, Venus rules 2 houses. Venus rules the 2nd house of earned income, as well as the 7th house of committed partnership. So this is why Venus is associated with money and luxury items, as well as, and, pleasure, as well as with love, romance and things like that. So I guess you could say with both of those that attraction is really the order of the day, because we could talk about the law of attraction with the 2nd house. And we can talk about attraction to a mate, whether it's that physical attraction. Physical attraction, a lot of times, can be the mechanism or the vehicle for which we find ourselves with, one person versus another. And that could be for spiritual reasons, not just for carnal reasons, like, oh, wow, that person is hot, I want to get with that person. It's really something that may be preordained by us, so that we make sure that we get with a certain person versus another person. And remember that not all people find the same people attractive. In general, people who are considered beautiful are universally considered beautiful. There have been studies done that even babies they find themselves more attracted to people that are generally considered attractive. So that is just a given. But when you get into the nuances of particulars, not everybody finds themselves, and this is because it's not just, I feel, the looks, it's the energetics of it. Like, you can sense that a person is on your wavelength, you're vibing with that person and whatnot. So this can be very good for you in many ways, where you can attract good things to you. But maybe just even more superficially, maybe you will be seen as more attractive physically, Leo. This is going to be the 1st house. So this is the house of the self. The physical body can be part of this. On the 9th, Mars goes retrograde. Now, Mars is in Aries, so that's nice, because that's a fellow fire sign. And since Aries is a sign before you. This is going to be the firehouse before you, which is the ninth house. This is Sagittarius house. So this is another thing that I was thinking about when I was thinking about Mercury in the third house and about documents. I was going to say this, but I wasn't sure if there were going to be any transits in your ninth house. I was going to talk about like travel. If you're preparing for like a long distance trip, whether for business or pleasure, then Mars retrograde in this house may mean that your plans have to be curtailed. That doesn't mean that they're not going to go forward, though. So just be aware of that, because Mars can be about travel, and it might be more inner travel for you right now. Now, some people are, and I would say a greater percentage than most in the general population who watch or listen to astrology tarot reports, who are doing so, may be transitioning from careers that are more typical to more spiritual careers. And if you're one of those people, Leo, this could be a situation where you are planning on traveling for training in yoga or something, with these kinds of holistic arts. But I think yoga is the main one where they travel. And if that's the case, you may have, I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't have like some kind of a online version, but I do believe you can't do everything online. I'm not sure about that, because I was offered a home version of yoga training. So maybe it's possible, but I would say that if Mars is retrograde, it wants you to go within, in the ninth house. And so do your inner traveling. This is your rule. No, it's not your ruler. That would be Aries. I'm getting my... the reason I got confused is because Mars is in Aries in its own sign. But this is a fire energy, and fire signs are very active people. Even when they are philosophical, they still have that energy that makes them very active and whatnot. And because of this, this is certainly something that you have to take into consideration, because you may be feeling like you have your wings clipped if you were planning on this and you were looking forward to it, but don't. Because Mars is going to turn direct, I believe it's around November 13th or so. So that's not that long from now. It's just 2 months and some change. And then you'll be back in business. And this is, again, just like the rest of us, I feel like we've been living in a giant retrograde for the last 6 months or so. As I record this, it hasn't been quite 6 months. But, it's so funny, because when I think about when the initial shutdown happened, they said 2 weeks. And I remember thinking, I can do it for 2 weeks. And then when it came back as, okay, it's going to be another month, I remember just laughing, because it was so hard for me for those first 2 weeks. And I bet that's true for a lot of Leos as well, because fire signs love freedom. I don't care, what your belief system is about, you still love freedom. Okay, so on the 12th, Jupiter turns direct. This is good for everybody. Jupiter is in Capricorn. And so where that energy is for you, in particular, is the 6th house, which is a very practical place. So you've had a lot going on in that 6th house. You've had Pluto. Pluto is still in that 6th. Jupiter, Saturn went back into the 6th house. And this is great, because you may have been noticing a bit of slowdowns, manifestation in your work. Even with money, Jupiter can be about money. So that could be now going in the right direction. And but sometimes, when Jupiter's retrograde, it can bring blessings as well, even monetary blessings, things that you didn't take advantage of before. If you had clients that kind of, flaked out on you, maybe they call you back. I mean, it could be one of those kinds of things. But now that Jupiter is direct, I think it's going to be a lot better. And, it doesn't hurt that you have the sun in that second house, because that's your earning capacity. And speaking of that, on the 17th, there is a new moon in this sector in the second house at 25 degrees of Virgo. So that is really cool. I'm trying to think. Let's see here. But, this is a late degree new moon. So for many of you that are Leos, except for the very, very tail end, this is actually happening in your first house of the self. So that new moon in Leo, that was in a late degree as well, that was more of, a 12th house. Now for you, this is your first house. And when I'm saying that, the significance of that is that when we're looking at the natal chart or the solar chart, we're looking at a wheel and we're looking at a cycle. And the first house marks a new cycle. And so when if you have Leo rising from 0 to 24 degrees, this is actually going to be in your first house. And so this will be a time to kind of set those intentions for the next 12 months, kind of like your birthday, if you will, where it's a new beginning, a new cycle. But for those of you at the tail end of Leo, Sun or rising, this is actually going to be in your second house. And this will be that kind of money mojo manifestation that you can partake in. And this is when the sun and the moon are an exact 25 degrees. So that means that the power of the sun is here, and that can create a lot of forward momentum with money issues. On the 29th, Saturn turns direct in that 6th house of work. So again, that might have been something. But this is also, I keep saying work, but this is also the house of health. So if you have been experiencing any health issues, Leo, with Pluto in that 6th, I was saying before in other readings that when Pluto is transiting your 6th house, there can be different possibilities. One of them, for those who are not careful, you have to be careful of eating disorders. Not just something like anorexia, but also orthorexia, of being obsessed with purity in diet, because Pluto is about purging, and it's also about control, and a lot of obsession and obsession. And a lot of eating disorders involve wanting to control because the person feels out of control in their life. So, you have to be able to understand, why you're doing what you're doing, because of course you want to eat clean. You don't want to eat things with chemicals, additives, what have you. But when people get obsessed about it, then they're freaked out. No, I can't have tap water because I'm going to get poisoned. But they become dehydrated because there's no other water around, where they are. But they're afraid of getting sick because they're eating impure food and stuff like that. Or just things like anorexia, again, trying to control an aspect of their life because the rest of their life feels out of control. But this can have, sometimes this can mean that you can't get away with eating junk food anymore or food that doesn't agree with you. Sixth house can be diet, and Pluto can transform the diet through and transform the health in general. But there can be a time where the body breaks down when Pluto is in the sixth house. And so when Saturn is also there, it lends discipline, but when Saturn is retrograde, there may be slacking off. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that the person understands that they have to get back on track and that they do so. And this can be the time, if you have lapsed in this area with diet or whatnot, that you get back on the horse again. Okay, Leo, that's what I have for you. I didn't plan to go this long. I don't know if anybody has stuck around. It is a half hour, but thank you for listening. And if you would like to explore the next year, what are the themes for you? Because this only touches the surface. I talk about eclipses. I talk about other things, and it's specific to your chart. As I said, this is general. But also your natal placements. I think that's even more important than transits, because transits come and go, but your patterns can be for life if you're not aware of them. And so I actually am promoting a combination transits reading with the natal interpretation, the chart interpretation, and a full-length tarot reading for a special price called the Whole Enchilada. I have other readings. You can check me out below. I'm at RainaMoonAstrology.com. Take care. Bye.